We will call to order the regular monthly meeting of the City of Helotes Planning and Zoning Commission. It is 7:01 on June 7th. I'd ask the commission secretary to call the roll, please.
Greg Michelle.
Here.
Jason Whiteman.
Here.
Ron Haza. Ann Carway.
Here.
David Cowler. Alex Blue.
Here.
Mario Rios. Jeff White.
Okay, and we have Salinas Perez from staff, Michael Gallardo. Anyone else I should know about with Susan here? It is.
Susan is under the weather. We do have our newly appointed city council liaison to planning and zoning, Councilmember Jen Sones.
Hello. Welcome. Glad you could be here. Thanks for joining us. All right, great. So we will forge ahead with our agenda tonight. Our first item for business is a public hearing to give all interested persons the right to appear and be heard on a request by Gilletteco LLC for a specific city council approved use permit to add a drive-through to Mary's Tacos, an existing restaurant on property zone B3 at 13439 Bandera Road. This public hearing, we will open it here shortly at 7:03. If you're here to speak, I simply ask that you tell us your name, your address. You are limited to 3 minutes. And this is really a time for the commission to hear from you rather than dialogue or question and answer sort of thing. But we welcome your comments on this item. So we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here this evening? Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, nobody signed up to speak under the public hearing.
Great. Okay, I still would give the opportunity if there is anyone here for it. And there is not, so we will close the public hearing. And we will move to citizens to be heard. Do we have anyone signed up this evening?
Mr. Chair, nobody signed up.
Great. All right, our first action item is discussion and action on the minutes of our special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of May 10th, 2022. You should have received this in the materials for this week's meeting. If there are any revisions, corrections, edits, please call those to our attention, or otherwise we can have a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve minutes as presented.
There a second?
I'll second.
Motion is to approve the minutes as submitted of the May 10th, 2022 meeting. All in favor of the motion, please signal aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, we come to item 6 tonight on the agenda, which is discussion and action on a request by Aaron Tyler for approval of a variance to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66, signs, Section 51. That's commercial signs, projecting and hanging signs for the Welcome Mat Storage 11295 Shanefield Road. Does staff have any additional materials or comment on this item as we get going here?
Mr. Chair, no additional comments or material.
Great. And is the applicant here tonight if there are questions? Great. Okay, so, and maybe if we could pull it up there. Thank you. Commission will recall that the applicant visited with us earlier this year, a few months ago.
A few months ago.
And after some discussion, I believe the resolution was to postpone or withdraw the item to allow the applicant additional time to consider different ideas and options. And so that brings us to the item that's before us here tonight. So I would open it to the commission if there are comments or questions for the applicant who's here on this item. So I open the floor to the commission.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions for the applicant.
Sure. Go ahead.
Is he here?
Yeah, in the back. So we'll put them out there, then we'll get them.
Okay. Just to confirm the design, so the picture showing the rendering on the fence seemed to have an additional white border area, but then the picture below it showing the sign seemed to just have a brown border. Just kind of clarify what the design is.
Yeah,
So before you respond, I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind coming up and putting on the record just your name and address.
Sure, right here?
Yep, perfect, thanks.
Okay, so that border will be the sign. We created that ourselves on the computer, so the whole sign will be what you see 6x4, acrylic vinyl.
And say your name and your address.
Lori Tyler, home address or business?
Business is fine.
I don't even know it. It's up there. What is it, babe? 11295 Shanefield.
Thank you much. Okay, go ahead, Jason.
And was there going to be any lighting on there? No, excuse me, no lighting is proposed. Forgive
No,
me, I
sir.
missed that applicant. And then probably more of a comment. I think this is a good solution here, given the hardships. Just more of a comment. I think this kind of approaches a monument sign in the way it's formed, and we might consider, both the street number requirement and the landscaping requirement that would seem to sort of fit the bill of what I think it's kind of trying to be. Just kind of throw that out there and
Okay.
see how everybody feels about it. And that's all I had.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't really have any questions, but I would actually respectfully disagree. I don't think it really does substitute for a monument sign. And while I understand that our ordinance, when it comes to a wall sign, pertains to building size, et cetera, like that, I don't know that a fence sign is an adequate substitute when we have an option for a monument sign. And so I'm not generally in favor of variances to the ordinance when I think the ordinance allows for an option that fits. And I understand what's trying to be accomplished here, but I just don't think that the variance is the appropriate answer when there are other options that are available options. And I know that not having a building, you can't put it on there, but if we start to grant signs on fences, I think we alter considerably what our intent was in the sign ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. I want to make sure, Ann, that we give you an opportunity, so if I forget, you just have to pipe in.
Oh, I definitely will.
Thank you. Ron or David, anything on this item?
No.
Question for staff, do they need the address on this sign?
On a wall sign, no, they do
Even though-
not.
even
On a
though-
monument sign, yes, you do.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions for the applicant?
So will this be considered a monument sign or just a wall sign?
At the moment, by what's before us here, it is a variation on a wall sign, I suppose.
Okay.
As we've noted, it doesn't fit comfortably into any one
On a building,
particular
okay.
category. So hence the variances, of which there are
3.
three. Thank you. Thank you much, you're good. At this point, I'd invite a motion, and then we can discuss the motion. We'll open that up to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, for lack of any positive motion, I will make this motion. I move to recommend disapproval of the variances requested by request by Aaron Tyler for the approval of a variance for municipal code of sign, chapter 66 signs, wall signs for the welcome mat storage at 11295 Shanefield Road, San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, is there a second for the motion?
I think I have a question. I'm not going to second the motion yet, but I'm sorry, I'm not able to bring up the whole screen with the variances, but will there be any kind of building going up eventually, or is this how it's going to look?
So to clarify, just for the record, the building does exist.
No, Mr. Chairman, this is strictly, I'll let the applicant answer.
Yeah. Hi, no, there is no building. It's a storage unit. There is no facility. So the fence is,
Pardon me, you're right. I'm thinking of the picture that has, but you're right. So it's simply on the fence for the storage of these items. Thank you, sorry.
yeah, no, you're good.
Ann, did you wish to second the motion?
No, not right now.
Okay, well, this motion is about to fail for lack of a second. All right, so there is not a second for this motion, so I would invite a different motion at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend approval with the stipulation that the sign add the address number and landscaping per the requirements for a monument sign.
I'll second that motion.
So let's discuss that motion.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right, you're good. So first, Jason, if you'd like to speak to the motion at all.
Yeah, I recognize the hardship, that there isn't a building or a lot going on here that kind of falls neatly into the categories. As I said in my questions, I think that it, does approach a monument sign, and that, I think trying to, meet something close to our ordinance requirements for this particular case would go a long way.
And do you wish to speak to the motion?
I think that in this circumstance, because there will be no building, and I think that the applicant has made efforts to conform as best as possible. I just think it's a difficult situation, and that there needs to be some kind of signage. I would like, if some other structure goes up on the property that can carry a sign in an appropriate fashion, I'd like to second the motion conditioned on that fact that if another structure goes up, that the applicant, come back. I don't know if we can structure it that way, but for now, I'm going to second the motion to that extent.
So I don't believe that we could do that, because if there
Okay.
is
They'd have to reapply.
they'd have to reapply.
They'd
for
have
the
to
sign.
reapply. Okay.
That would be a natural process.
But if they were to propose putting a sign on a building or something, then we can say, well, you can
Correct.
put that, but you can take the other one down.
Correct.
Yeah, because they'd only be allowed to have one.
One per
One
sign.
sign.
Yeah, so we still have leverage if they,
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess if there was a building, of course, the applicant would want to put it somewhere else, because it's not the most convenient place for the applicant as well, so. Okay, so I'll second the motion as is.
We got that. Thank you. Ron?
Mr. Chairman, I think the address on the sign is also a safety item for emergency services.
Anything further? I would just comment before the vote that I appreciate the applicant's revisions. If you recall, a few months ago, we saw something very, very different, and that we had some concerns about. I think this is, while not perhaps the first choice of the applicant or even necessarily of the commission, I think it's a reasonable sign, and the proposed additions here that we've made can only enhance it. So thank you all for working with us. So let me just repeat the motion, which is to recommend approval of the request by Aaron Taylor for the variances to Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 66 signs, Section 51 commercial signs, projecting and hanging signs for the welcome mat storage at 11295 Shanefield Road, with the stipulation that the street address and the landscaping of the monument sign ordinance be applied here. All in favor of the motion signal aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
This motion is approved, and we'll go to City Council on
July 14th. July 14th.
July, not June, July.
The second meeting for June will be canceled.
Got it. So July the 14th. And if you have questions about process with that or how that, check with staff, but July 14 is the date. So Yep. Okay, we will move to our next item tonight, which is the discussion and action on the request by Gillette Co. LLC for specific city council approved use permit to add a drive-through to Mary's Tacos, an existing restaurant on property zone B3 at 13439 Bandera Road. We have rendering in our materials. Is there a representative of the applicant if there are questions tonight? Nope. Anything to add from staff on this?
Nothing further to add.
Folks will recall, are familiar with this business, which is opened about a year plus ago up Bandera Road, not far from city offices. And there was some discussion at the original appearance of Mary's Tacos before this body about a future request for a drive-through. And that is what they're here in front of us for this evening with their application. So any discussion or comment from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I actually have just one question for staff.
Yep.
Does it meet the stacking requirements for the city codes? There's like usually a car, like a number of cars that can stack up behind it, the drive-through in point of engagement. Do we have an ordinance about that?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
If you notice, it goes all the way back, and that would just be designated for the drive-through.
Okay,
So yes.
okay, very good.
I presume the applicant would be back before us regarding signage that would accompany this at some future date. So again, this is a recommendation item for council to ultimately determine because it's a specific use permit. Invite a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion
Please.
to recommend approval of discussion of an action on a request by Gillette Co. for a specific city council approved use permit to add a drive-through to Mary's Tacos, an existing restaurant on property zone, general business district B3 located at 13439 Bandera Road.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ron, any discussion further? Jason, Ron?
You know, we've basically previously seen this. It appears to meet all the city ordinances. It's zoned properly. There really isn't much buffer issues. It backs up to streets on both sides. I don't see any impediments here.
Ron? Anyone, anything else? So the motion is to recommend approval of the request by Gillette Co. LLC for the specific city council approved use permit to add a drive-through to Mary's Tacos on property currently zoned B3 at 13439 Bandera Road. All in favor, please signal aye.
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 Opposed? This motion is approved and will go to city council, I presume at that same July meeting,
This one is actually going this Thursday,
this Thursday.
June 9th.
I presume the applicant is aware of that. Very good. Okay, our next item on our agenda is a presentation. I presume we have the representatives here for that. This is from SCC Development Company and Paravel, hope I'm saying that right, Capital, on a proposed mixed-use development pursuant to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98 zoning, Article 6 planned unit development, property located at Bandera Road, and identified as BCAP property ID 242013. So who is representing, who is going to make this presentation?
Yeah, I'll start.
Perfect.
Hand it off.
So each time you guys come up and somebody new speaks, if you just introduce yourself and put your business address on the record.
I'm Adam Love with SCC Development. We're a retail developer for the last 18 years. And we are here to present a mixed-use development with a commercial component with for rent single family. But really, I'd like to turn it over to our partners, Paravel Capital, to present the single family component, being that it's 80% of the site, and then we can kind of discuss commercial from there. if that works for you, Curtis.
Hello?
I'm Curtis Thigpen with Paravel Capital. You need an address as well?
Yeah, please.
1509 Old West 38th Street, Austin, Texas, 78731.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as Adam mentioned, we're proposing mixed-use development here with, and we can say on that slide, it's a great slide to kind of go off of. We currently are showing, it's about 6 or 7 acres of retail that is fronting Bandera, with just one building there on the corner that is on Scenic as well as for rent residential community. And we've put a lot of thought into buffers, parking, the aesthetic of the community in relation to the overall community, but also the neighboring residential. The site currently shows about 11.5 acres of green space that's dedicated to some of the buffer zone, park space, detention, yards, private yards, and common area. Parking will be sufficient for the development. That's, I think right now it's yielding almost a little over two units or 2 parking spaces per unit. And again, it'll be a higher end for rent community that has kind of a Texas Hill Country aesthetic to it. Higher end finishes on interiors from stainless steel appliances and hard surface or quartz or granite counters. Vaulted ceilings. Exterior facade could be a combination of limestone and board and batten with pitched roofs, standing seam metal roofs. And so it's a higher end component, higher end feel to kind of blend in and be complementary to other residential developments and residential communities in Helotes. Happy to answer any questions that you guys may have in relation to the design or just the thought behind the layout of the community. And if it's retail
So
directed.
let's hear the whole, there's additional aspects to the presentation. Let's go through it and then we can come back in for questions. You can hold your question for right now, if you have a question.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the commercial side of it, we've been doing retail development, like I said, for about 18 years. Built about 6.5 million feet around the country. Historically, it's been primarily big box development. Amazon's changed that model for everybody across the board, and we're now doing more service-oriented, regional type developments. We're doing a project, one of our biggest projects here in San Antonio is down at the front door of Broke City Base at Military in New Braunfels. Got a 17-acre site down there where we're developing more of a kind of experiential type development. And that's what we envision here is definitely more of a regional type tenant that's service oriented, because at the end of the day, you know, retail development is dead, as y'all know, unless it's some kind of grocery anchored shopping center. It really just doesn't exist anymore. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, the site's zoned commercial right now. It's 30 acres.
Introduce yourself if you would.
I'm sorry, I'm Joe Acock. I work with Adam, and I specialize in the retail development side of it. The site's 30 acres, it's zoned commercial. The idea of it coming into the city, instead of putting in a larger retail project like this, we thought it was better suited to kind of downplay on the density of a large commercial project with the bright lights and the big box retail and bringing all the traffic in that way. We thought it was better suited for a mixed-use project where it's kind of a live, work, play, where you have amenities in the area where you can service your walk to and from where you live, where you work, and where your retail services is, with high-end restaurants, shopping, things like that, for the retail component of it. It's suited well for that size of retail, for the 30 acres. It does work, but it is a lot for the site. We see this as the highest and best use for this kind of site in Helotes.
And we designed it to where the retail is an amenity to the residential, and vice versa, to where, you know, the folks living in this community, they've got a spot to go for date night or whatnot. And those are the type tenants we're trying to draw to the site, is more of a regional type credit tenant.
And similar to our Brooks project, there's a 60 acres that another partner is building on the military housing down there that is similar to this single family for rent community. And it surrounds our retail project. We're building a town center with town center amenities. Everything has pedestrian walkways, kind of focuses in the center portion of our retail project, and is surrounded with the retail, or surrounded with the residential, excuse me. So that is a similar concept that we're working on here, but we're trying to tuck majority of the residential behind it instead of right in the middle of our retail.
Yeah, and that buffers from lighting
Yeah.
to, you know, the residents surrounding the site. And, you know, what we envision and what we're trying to achieve is as many, you know, outdoor patios as possible, and just more of that experience of retail development rather than, you know, your typical AT&T and whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm sure there are questions, comments, so probably don't go far. Want to kick this off?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a few questions if I could, and
Sure.
and it might involve both of you, so I don't know, because one I think works with the residential and one more
Sure.
the commercial part of it. So, it is anticipated that it will all be rental, right? There's no expectation that the people who would reside in the units behind the commercial part would be potential owners, correct? It's all residential.
That's correct. It'll be a for-rent community that's professionally managed. So in the center there, we'll have luxury amenities from luxury-style pool, clubhouse, co-working space, dog park, dog washing stations. It'll be professionally managed by a property management company, does all the maintenance. It's turnkey lawn maintenance. So for the resident, it's a turnkey for-rent product.
A few of the questions, if I may. You indicated that it would be more of a higher end, and presumably that not only in the quality, but possibly in the rent price as well. I'm not questioning that part. But normally, when you think about the higher end, you think about someone who might want covered parking. And I noticed that of the multiple 1, 2, and 3 bedroom, the only one that has a garage is the 3 bedroom. Is that correct? So the others would basically be outdoor parking from what I saw on here. And at that, they only have a 1-car space. You indicated, so one of you indicated earlier that you would have plenty of parking spaces. And so my question is, with higher end, you normally have 2 cars per household. Is there going to be street parking as well, or is it only in these few parking spaces that you see between the clusters of places? Because that to me becomes a question about access and crowding and everything of that nature.
Yeah, so on average, there's roughly 2 spaces per unit. So if there's 230 units, it's 460 spaces.
Okay, and does that include the areas by the commercial part, or only the parts in the back?
No, that's just for the residential. And so it's a combination of garages. And I think the current site plan shows roughly 40 to 45 units that have garages. There's some of the 2 bedrooms that also have garages. It's a combination of garages, kind of tucked in parking stalls that could have a carport over it, so it wouldn't be a full garage, but would be covered parking.
Okay.
And then there is some street parking as well. That's some parallel parking that's out in front of the homes.
That's hard to see.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there going to be any restriction from the business side of it, road access to the residential side, like a gate? Is there anything anticipated that way, or is it just going to be free-flowing between the commercial portion of it and the residential portion of it?
I think we're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Based on the tenants that we're working with, and, you know, this is a preliminary design thus far.
Yeah, we started as a gated community, and it's kind of opened up into more of a pedestrian-friendly kind of come and go and then open up the vehicle, but we have not decided on that yet.
That leads me really to my next question, is I see that there are, according to what the design that we've been given, there are only 3 entry points for this entire complex, right? So only one on Scenic Loop, which at this point is strictly a 2-lane road. And that's the area that works towards the middle of that side of the property. in and out there, which could very well be an entry point for a lot of vehicles. And then the other two are in the commercial section, which somebody who lives in the residential is going to have to weave around through commercial properties and all that to get back to their property. And I'm thinking that one that might be a little bit inconvenient, but my bigger concern is police and fire protection and access quickly to get back to those areas, especially fire with that many buildings, multiple story buildings in there. If something happens in the back end, they're going to have to figure out how to get through it, which was kind of related to my question about street parking and the crowding and the safety aspect of it. And I know before it gets to that point, it's going to have to go to the fire marshal and get all the sign off. But narrow entries and only a limited number for that many residences, to me is a little bit of a concern. Also, the fact that if you don't want to end up going through the commercial side, you're going to put hundreds of cars in and out that one entrance off of a 2-lane road on Scenic Loop. And so as you continue to think through your design, make sure to think that one through as well, because that is a potential concern in my opinion.
Those
are my questions. Thank you.
Has a traffic study been done?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. But as y'all, I'm sure, are aware, any for rent residential development, the traffic analysis is significantly less than a commercial development. I mean, you've got people leaving in the morning, going to work, and coming home at night.
Not as many
That's
trips.
typically it. That's right, not as many trips.
Yeah, and our civil engineer couldn't make it tonight, but as you also know, any improvements on the roads on 16 are kind of turning into super streets where they're making that the restructure of that light and the full turn on Scenic Loop would provide access to that.
And we've been in communication with the fire department, and the streets here are actually wider than what's required for fire access.
Based on their recommendation, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's actually some room. The streets that we're showing now, including with street parking, are wider than what's technically required by the fire department. And so there's a lot of thought going into accessibility, and it doesn't benefit us from a residential perspective and benefit the residents living there to have constrained access to the property. So there will be a lot of thought into ease of access to the homes within limitations of how many driveways that we can have.
Thank you.
David, do you have anything additional?
That's my biggest concern is the traffic, from what I've seen so far, with that one access point off Scenic Loop.
Jason?
Just kind of about our point about traffic, one thing we got to keep in mind is that 16 is a state road, state impact, and they will probably, my guess would be that they're going to probably have to put a turn lane in. I don't know if y'all have reached out to TxDOT. That's neither here nor there, but
Yeah,
just
our civil's already, we've seen the plans, and to Joe's point, what he was talking about, that turn around at the light.
Yeah,
It would alleviate traffic on Scenic Loop is what TxDOT is going to, whatever design they come up with, and that turnaround is going to alleviate traffic on Scenic Loop.
Yeah, I think the overall planning is very good. I mean, obviously putting the retail on, the highest use totally makes sense. Just a couple questions about the commercial side. Are you all intending to develop these buildings yourselves as shell buildings, or is there potentially some of them going to be pad sites, or do you see it all shaking out?
It'd probably be a mixture of both. I mean, right now we may have 1 or 2 pad sites that we will rent out to some restaurant users that are interested, some higher-end restaurants that would come in. But then we'd be building some shells and hopefully coming in with a more neighborhood service. I'm not going to promise a grocery store, but that's what we're pursuing, something similar to that, that would kind of anchor a smaller retail project similar to this.
Okay, yeah, so that kind of leads into my question, which is who's the target market, and if there potentially there's some restaurant use, so there might even potentially be some drive-through. I guess it's kind of broad strokes. I realize this is a long way away, but just, what are we thinking here in terms of those tenants?
Our target right now is 2 higher-end restaurants and fast casual. Everybody in today's market is trying to get a not necessarily a drive-through, quick service drive-through window, but a drive-up window for to-go. So it'd be 3 to 4 restaurants similar to that, with some neighborhood service retail with restaurant components in it, and potentially and hopefully a grocery.
Say that last part again.
hopefully a grocery stores who we're pursuing. We're still got a long way to go for this approval and getting there, but that's what the
I
target
mean,
project is.
obviously, it'd be a smaller format boutique grocer. I mean, you don't have enough land.
Yeah.
No chicken restaurants. I saw that. There's a bunch.
There's a bunch of them.
Done your homework.
Yeah.
The last is almost more a question for us as a community. I think this is new. I don't know if anybody's familiar with these, but you're starting to see these communities pop up where it's single family form, but a rental property. And I don't think our zoning code addresses that head on directly. I don't know that it necessarily needs to, but just something to think about in terms of, are we considering this single family use? Are we considering multifamily use? Is just kind of a question. I think that there's been a lot of good steps here to address either one of those scenarios of consideration, and they may change or how we think about it depending on the density or number of units per building. But just something to kind of keep in the back of our minds, I guess, if this continues to work its way through the community. So that's all I have.
Ann, did you have any comments or questions?
Not at this time, thanks.
Thanks. I would we've hit some good points up here. I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I think the addition of any housing stock is an excellent thing at this point in time, given what we're all facing. Can you explain a little more about the approach or the rationale, I guess, for the rental option versus either multifamily rentals or single-family residences? Why this particular approach?
Yeah, we're kind of meeting the market where it is and where the demand is. And today, there's apartment communities on most corners, and we're talking high density, 20 to 30 units per acre, 3 to 4 story walk up. And I don't think that's what would fit well here and what would go here. So we didn't really attempt to even pursue that. On the for sale side, compared to the for rent, and I think it's especially true even in the last 6 months or so, with what home prices have done in the past year in Central Texas, in San Antonio, here, how much prices have gone up in the last year. And then even more recently, how much interest rates are going up. And so we feel pretty strongly that there's a lot of demand for this type of product because the product does feel and live more like a home. It's a for rent product. It might be a little smaller scale than your average 3 or 4 bedroom home, but there's 2 and 3 bedroom units. The majority of these, the floor plans would be 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. But it lives and feels and functions more like a home than it does an apartment community. And there's a 12-month commitment, roughly. It's turnkey, there's no maintenance. And so compared to, a home where it's for sale, you're saving for a down payment, mortgage payments, taxes, insurance are significantly higher. And so there's a really good trend for a lot of demand for this because again, it lives and feels and functions more like a home does. Yard, as you mentioned, it's a covered parking garage. You're not parking in a parking garage, or there is some surface parking here, but not all of it. And just so the benefits of this style of community compared to owning a home is one of the reasons that we're going that direction on the development side.
And if I got it right, there are 3 different floor plans at the moment.
Correct.
And maybe you said this and I missed it, but what was in terms of the numbers, 230 units planned, what is the division?
Yeah, so the breakdown, and we're doing a pretty in-depth market study to understand, again, we're trying to optimize for where is the most demand. Right now, the majority of it will probably be 2 bedrooms. So greater than half would be 2 bedrooms. Next would probably be the 1 bedrooms and a smaller percentage to 3 bedrooms.
Very good. Okay, a question, and maybe staff could just articulate this regarding process. So this is a presentation. This is not an opportunity for the commission to act on anything at this point. There's nothing to act on yet. But to learn about what's being thought about as part of the plan unit development process, could staff articulate how this will proceed for the benefit of the community? And Mary, maybe you'd be the best person for this.
So we're going to do another presentation to council because they wanted to hear, we wanted to make sure that the public was aware of this project. We actually posted it 2 weeks, got it on Nextdoor, everything else, and then it'll go to council for another presentation. From there, the developers will make a determination if they want to do what they call a PUD variance. That's what this is. It would be a planned unit development for that. That is allowed in our code. And they meet all three criterias. You have green space, you have residential, and you have commercial. So it meets those criterias, but in a PUD, it has to be approved by council. So it's not an automatic, and it allows for us not to do spot zoning where we're changing the zone of the actual property itself. It is a special variance zoning for that, to allow that. So the reason they wanted to do a presentation, it is very expensive because they need full engineering site plans for it when it's ready for the PUD. When you have that, it basically tells you all the setbacks, the street size, everything. It plans the whole unit, and they have to stick to that plan. So that's why we're doing the presentation, to also get feedback from planning and zoning, to get feedback from council for them, so they can decide if they want to move forward with this project.
And of course, then it'll be back before both bodies
Yes.
eventually for the final determination.
Right. At that point, there'll be a public hearing, it'll come out to planning and zoning, another public hearing in council, and then for council, for presentation and approval.
And once a PUD is, if a PUD is approved, that sets the full parameters for what is allowable or not allowable.
Correct. On that site plan.
Any process comments or questions from the commission?
I don't see any detention ponds.
It's in the back area where the 175-foot buffer.
You mean at the top of the hill?
Yes,
No, opposite, on the scenic
North
side.
side.
on the scenic side.
2.5 acres below point of the
Yeah, that rectangle.
All that attention at the top of that page right there, that top right of the site plan.
Yeah, I see it.
And that's actually, from another project, we noticed that's where the water actually comes from on that portion of the property. And they did come through different presentations with staff, and some of the recommendations we made, they actually put in this presentation, especially the back buffer, because of the residential homes behind there, to allow for a big enough buffer.
This will be going to council for the presentation
This Thursday.
this Thursday. So that's another opportunity for community members to attend and citizens to be heard. And now that you've got a little information to offer some feedback and personal perspective on it as they prepare to present to council. Okay, very good. That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this evening. I want to thank folks for attending, and I won't see you before the 4th of July. I would like to point out that our next meeting has been moved or actually canceled. The July 5th meeting will not occur. We will be meeting on July the 19th here in Chambers, which is a workshop for planning and zoning. So July the 19th, 7 p.m. Right here. And the city attorney will be with us for that. Will council be participating?
They can attend if they'd like.
They'll have their own.
They'll have their.
They're having a separate orientation.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn, Rod?
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of adjourning, signal aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And adjourn at 7:44.